Okay. For all the people potentially watching now, what's up? Okay, so I'm Sicily. We've been doing this really awesome, fun, simple cooking class. I am a chef in New York. I used to live in the Bay Area. I opened a restaurant in the Bay Area called Pinky and Red, which is still there. And in my sad time, I started volunteering with the Cooking Project, and we partnered, past tense, with the OACC to do some really like live and in-person fun cooking classes. So now we're bringing them to you through the interweb. So this class this week, last week we did a salad. Oh, and that reminds me. So we did like a really cool like cabbage, fresh knife cut salad. A lot of you asked about my, a few of you, not a lot of you, a lot of you asked about my preserved lemons. This is what they look like, and I'm super excited about them. So all I did was cut them in half. You can cut them, I guess, in any way you want, but you want them to be pretty big. I would say halves are the best. So I cut them in half, and I did like, I want to say like a pound of lemons maybe, and like 3 to 4 tablespoons of kosher salt. So what I did was I would cut them in half, and then I would layer them in and sprinkle salt, and then layer them in and sprinkle salt and layer them in. And I would smash them a little bit. I've read recipes where you can like smash them a little bit, let them sit for a week, and then go back and open them up and like juice them. I did do that with this recipe. The recipe I did after, because I preserved some oranges. I didn't do that. I just let them sit. So they say that like you can go back and juice them, so you get more juice in here to help break down the lemons. And you can also flavor them. So the next batch I'll do, I'll probably add like chili flakes and things like that to like flavor them, maybe be like a little spicy. You can add like oregano or rosemary or thyme or something like that. And so I just did them plain this time. And yeah, I let them sit for about 4 weeks, and that was it. And so we used them this past week in a cooking recipe, and they were like super good and delicious. I was really excited about them. So it's literally just the lemon juice and the salt. And then once you get them all in there, so you want a good container with a lid, then you want to drizzle like maybe a tablespoon of oil over the top and let them sit. I would probably do like 1.5 teaspoons. I felt like I did a full tablespoon of oil, and I felt like mine were a little oily. So yeah, so that was that. And so today we're going to make dough, and it's a flatbread recipe. And I love it because it's something that keeps really well in the, like in your cabinet. You can also put it in your refrigerator, but we store ours in our cabinet, like in a Ziploc baggie over a few weeks. And then, you can heat it up if you want. You don't have to, like sometimes my kids will just grab it and like make a snack out of it, but it's really, really super simple and good. So if you have the recipe, we posted everywhere on social media. It is 3 3/4 cup of flour here. And then it's a stick of butter and 1/3 of a cup of yogurt, 1 egg, a pack of yeast, a pack of dry active. A pack of instant yeast. If you have dry active, I just use the same measurements. It's 2.5 teaspoons. I didn't want to stress about it. And then I did 2 tablespoons of sugar, and then a tablespoon of salt. You can add more salt if you like, but I would hang back, like, because if you want to flavor it, if it's already salty, then you can't be as adventurous with the things that you're putting in it. And then 1/4 of a cup of oil. So I boiled my water beforehand, and so my water is pretty hot, and I just put the cup in a thing. Now let's talk about this. I'm using instant, I'm not using the packet, I'm using the dry active yeast. So I don't have to let my yeast bloom. If you're using the packet of yeast, then you want to take the packet and like 1/4 of a cup of water. So on the recipe, it says 1/4, and then the rest So it's like a cup of water. So take a fourth of that and let it just sit in the water. You want it about 115, 110, 115 degrees. And then, because you don't want it too hot because it'll kill the yeast. And you just want to like swirl the yeast, like put it the cup of water and then swirl the yeast into the cup. You want to let the yeast live and do its thing. You don't want to over stir it and all of that. If you want to accelerate the process, your measurement of sugar is the 2 tablespoons. You can actually take a teaspoon of that and put it into the yeast in the water, and that'll help because the yeast feed on sugar. So you can help that like bloom a little faster. But like for mine, I dump it all in. You want to kind of keep everything a little bit separate, especially if you're using instant yeast that's like fresh, because you don't want the salt to kill the yeast. So I don't know if you can see because I'm not sure. Oh, we're looking at me this way. If we switch to a camera that's overhead, you can see everything that's happening on the counter. So I'm just going to I separated my flour. It's 3 3/4, right? So I have 3 cups automatically going into my bowl. Here it's pre-measured, right? But let's talk about what you want it to look like, because sometimes it's easier to go by weight because we all measure things a little differently. So when you have your measuring cup, right, you just want to scoop it out and like give it a shake and fill it up. You don't want, unless the recipe says packed, you don't want to like shove it in there, because that's almost like doubling the amount of flour or sugar or something that you're using. So you want to keep it like it's not fully leveled if you see it sideways. And I'm just going to scrape off the top and make sure that it's a level cup. It's a level cup and dump it in there, right? So that's my flour. And then I'm going to dig. Normally I would do this in a mixer, but for the sake of sound, I'm not doing that for you guys. So I'm just going to move it around a little bit. So this is my flour. And then I'm going to take my salt and put it over here and try to keep everything a smidge separate just to be safe. And then my yeast is going to hang out over here. And then I'm going to crack my egg. I'm actually going to, you know what, for dishes purposes, because I hate doing dishes, I'm going to take my yogurt and just put it in the center, right? And then I'm going to take my egg and I'm going to crack my egg into my yogurt bowl, so it's not going directly into my mixture. And like if it's, you know, got floaties in it or a shell. A fun fact is the easiest way to get eggshell out is with the eggshell. It acts like a magnet and you just scoop it out. So I'm gonna do that in there, and I'm gonna begin to like mix this a little bit. And then I'm gonna add my oil. I'm starting to mix it because I want it to work and not be like super clumpy. The mixer would do a lot of this work for me, but because I'm mixing it by hand, I don't want to go super crazy. Caveat, I'm not a baker. I'm a chef, but that's a very different skill set to be a baker. But like as a chef, you always want to have like something in your back pocket that you can do. So this is that. Then I'm going to take my oil. You can't see. And I'm going to pour it into, this is my butter, sorry, my melted butter. I'm going to pour it into my hot water. So I'm only working with one thing. And I'm going to start to like pour it a little bit in stages. And I'm just going to fold very gently. Stir very gently and begin to like fold and mash it, because you don't want it to splash and then you lose your flour. And because it's mixed up, when it goes out of the bowl, you don't know what else you're losing. You could be losing a good portion of your salt and things like that. So I'm just going to mix it till it starts to come together. So the majority of this is done in the mixer, right? Like this is the heavy lifting part. That whatever kind of mixer you have, a KitchenAid or whatever, is doing for you. So you will get like a nice little workout in. Now keep in mind, this was only 3 cups. So like you'll see a recipe sometimes that will say like 3 3/4 cup plus extra. The extra is for your bench flour. So I do have my 3/4 that I need to mix into this dough, and then hanging out in the back, I have bench flour, which is always all-purpose flour that I'm gonna put on my counter so it doesn't stick. So I'm gonna keep folding this in here. I separate them sometimes because in the mixer, it mixes pretty well. I mean, you could always put it all in, but see how like it's still really wet. So like if I take it out, it looks like glue when you were a kid doing a science project with flour and water. So this is still pretty wet. So I'm just gonna sprinkle this in here and let the bowl do a lot of the messy work for me. And then I'm gonna add a little bit more. And at any point, if you want to be adventurous, you can start using your hand. And that's what I'm doing. If you hear my kids in the background, it's because, you know, they're in a pandemic and they're arguing. No, you're not, but whatever. So see how it's starting to come together? I mean, it's still like sticking to my hands, so it's still fairly wet. But I'm gonna do a little bit of the work in here so I don't have to chase my flour. Right? I mean, if you want to continue to knead it in here, you totally can. If you don't want to like get it on your counter and like make a mess, especially if you've got tile counters. So so it's together pretty well. So I'm going to take a little bit of my bench flour and just throw it on my counter. And I'm gonna pull it out. It's basically where I need it to be. So I probably added too much flour because you have to be careful with this because whatever flour that you add is going to go into your dough. So I'm just gonna take it and I'm gonna press it down. I don't know if you guys can see, if it's like a little blurry. And then I'm going to like press it out and I'm pulling it back, pushing, and I'm just turning. So I'm pressing it and then I'm gonna take this part and pull it in and then I'm gonna push it. So I'm pulling this part back and folding it over and then pushing it out and then pulling. So I'm gonna keep always turning it. So I'm pulling, turning, pushing it out. I'm pulling this piece over and I'm gonna pinch it here and then I'm gonna push it out and I'm gonna turn it. I mean, you don't have to turn it, you know, it's easier like, I don't know, motor skills wise. So I'm gonna do that. And then it's gonna be super soft, right? This class is gonna go by really fast today. If you guys have any questions, let me know. And that's it. You want it to, I can knead it a little bit more, but I can feel it. The more you start to knead it, the gluten starts to come together, right? So it starts to create these bonds. So as you're working it, it's a little relaxed, and the more you work it, it gets stiff and tight. And you don't want that. You want it to be relaxed. So I see that it's starting to get like a little stiff. You can also tell when you start to like move it around, it'll shrink back together. You see it shrinking, it's probably hard, but you see how it's like coming back? It's because it's not relaxed. So I'm gonna leave it alone. And I'm going to take the bowl that I mixed it in and I'm gonna oil it, right? And then I'm gonna put this in here. I'm gonna oil the top a little bit. And then I'm gonna get a paper towel and I'm gonna wet it so it's damp. And I'm gonna cover it and let it like hang out and relax. I mean, I typically go for, 30 minutes is pretty good. Just to like let it sit and hang and grow and do its thing. If you want it to rise really well, you can put it like somewhere like warmer in your kitchen to hang out. So I have one that I made maybe like an hour ago. So, but okay, caveat, this is huge, but I also doubled the recipe. So don't think that like it's gonna rise that much. It can, but it's not. This is double that recipe because my neighbor likes this bread, so I'm gonna make it for her. So it's rested. So if you see, it's like pulling from the sides, you can see like the gluten forming on the sides, and that's what you want. So I'm just gonna gently pull it out. And my surface is already kind of floured. I'm gonna add a little bit more, not much, because I don't wanna keep making the dough stiffer by adding flour and drying it out from adding the warm water and everything. So I'm just gonna pull it out gently. And I'm just gonna press it because it starts to like gas up from the yeast. So this is just degassing it. You're just gonna press it out. And then I'm going to, I put boiling water in this one. I took the risk. Sometimes I play around with the temperature. So I use boiling water, and I'm gonna flour it because this helps, like helps it not stick. And a good way to get flour off your hands if you feel like your hands are wet is just put dry flour on your hands, and then that'll help get the wet flour off too. So I'm not gonna use this whole thing. I will. We've got time. So I'm just gonna cut it in sections. And this is like a bench scraper, a dough cutter, a pastry cutter, right? So I'm gonna cut this. I'm gonna cut this one. I'm just gonna set it aside. You can also like cover them so they don't dry out. You don't want to work that hard and then your dough be like crunchy and like develop a skin, like a crust on top. That sucks. So there's this one. So I have 4 big pieces. So then I'm gonna take these and I'm probably gonna make at least 4 more. So I'm at least have 16 pieces out of this, but this is pretty big. Like this is huge. So I may cut these in half too. Cause that's, yeah. So I can probably do 8. So that's what I was saying. Like, you can easily get 16 out of this recipe. It's super easy. So I'm gonna set these over here. I'm gonna like make a little setup so I remember like which one I started with. And I'm gonna, okay, so I'm terrible at this. I used to work at a bakery in Oakland, Reams, California, who's brilliant. And she makes like amazing food. And so they would roll the flatbread and people could do it with 2 hands. And my brain does not work that way. I started doing it. It felt like I could. I got super excited, but I'm not going to. So you want to take, when you're rolling it, you want to roll it into a ball and you're going to take your fingers and wrap around, and that's kind of guiding it. And so your top 3 fingers, your pinky and your thumb are moving it. Your other 3 fingers are kind of help shaping it because I want it to be round, right? So this is a whole like process. So I'm gonna roll it. I don't have that much flour on here because I want the slickness to be able to roll it in a ball. Because if you get the flour kind of acts like a speed bump. So it gets harder to roll. So see, I rolled it. It's pretty smooth. And so I'm just set it here. So I know that was my first one. And this one was my second one. Because I know that first one is gonna relax, right? So I wanna keep doing this and give them time to relax. And so there's my second. And here's my third. It's easier to roll it if you like can find a good size to make your dough. The smaller it is, sometimes it feels like it's harder to roll because it doesn't fit in your hands super easy. So I'm just gonna roll it into, and then I'm gonna let them rest. It's like a 18-step process. So I'm gonna roll them like this and let them rest, right? And then I'm gonna get my rolling pin and roll them out into flat discs and let those rest. And then I'm gonna start cooking them off. So I'm rolling it again. Sometimes they're like really good. And then sometimes I roll these and you just be like, oh, that's unfortunate. So there we go. Like this one is hard. It's a hard, like. Okay. So I'm almost done. We can do a few more. Do you guys have any questions? I know everyone's on mute. I can see everyone's names. Does anybody, oh, there is a chat. Let's see if you have any questions. Oh, the chat is the ingredients. Hey, thank you, Rachel. I'm gonna let them there.
I do have a question, actually.
Huh. What's that?
So you can you make the dough and freeze it for
Yes.
later?
You can make it. I would do up until this point, right? Because it's going to be harder for you to like freeze it and get to this consistency. So you want to make it up. And I've done that before. You just throw them all on like a little sheet pan or like a container, wrap them, and then you let them, like let's say you did them the day before or something and you want to cook them out. You want to take them out of the freezer the night before, or, you know, let's be realistic. We're in the home. You want to pull them out in a few hours so they come down to like a good cold temperature, so that way you could just roll them out. So if you do it, you want to at least get to the part where you've rolled them into balls and then freeze that, because that's the majority of the work. And then I'm just gonna grab this one. I'm actually gonna put these back in my mixing bowl and cover them because they are getting a little dry. And then I'll do this one. That's good. Yeah, I'll make 2 out of this one, 2 out of that one. And it depends, like sometimes I take this and like, okay, so honest moment, I have a wheat allergy. So the fact that I even do this, sometimes my nose starts to itch. I shouldn't be eating this, but whatever, it's fine. So I try to like portion control myself, right? So I'll make these like half the size. So they're like mini versions. So like I feel like it's in moderation and I've gotten the thing that I wanted, but not like killed my allergies or messed up like my diet or something like that. I will do that. But then there are other times when I'll make it in like fried in butter and put ice cream over it and powdered sugar, and it feels like a breeze on a hot day. Just perfect. Okay. All right, so I got a good amount. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I got 14 over here, and then so I can probably do 24 out of the batch I did earlier, and these are pretty big. These are actually really, really big. I probably would have done them a little smaller. So I'll probably give these to my neighbor. And then I'm going to roll them all out and flour them. This is where I always like lose my way because it's like, how much space do you really have? Where is this going? So I'm gonna take my flour, just a little bit, right? And then on the counter, and then on my pen, and I have like a little extra, that's fine. I can just move it aside. I'm gonna roll these out. So you can see how it's shrinking. That means I need to like give our friend a rest too. So by the time I'm finished rolling them out, it'll be okay. So I'm gonna roll it, and then I'm gonna take it, and I'm just gonna flour. I don't know if you can see it. Let me slide this over. I'm gonna put it here. I'm just gonna flour it. I'm gonna flour it heavy because I can just shake that flour off because I'm not gonna work with it. And then I'm gonna flour the other side because it does absorb the flour. And I don't, as I stack them, I don't want them to stick together, especially when it's hot. And then like you can also take it and stretch it, like, you know, when you go see pizza. See, I tore this one, but it's okay, I can redo it. You can stretch it with your knuckles. I wrote this one pretty thin. Yeah. So if you don't like want to make it too thin, you can make it as thin as you want. The thinner you make it, it'll be like crunchier, crispier. And the thicker it is, it'll be like doughier flatbread. I'm just gonna roll these out. Do you guys have any questions? Just gonna set it there. And the cool thing is I'm gonna stack them and then flip them over and use them. All right. I'm gonna do a few more because I actually want to let these bad boys rest a little bit longer. And the cool thing is the more you let them rest, you can actually make them small, right? Because the more they rest, they'll continue to rise and like double in size. And the more the yeast develops and the gluten develops and they get to relax, the more delicious that they are. So you don't want to rush this process. So like literally you can make it, set a timer for 30 minutes, and then roll them into these balls and then set a timer for like 10 minutes once you finish all of them. And then you can like come back and roll them out. And then once you roll them out, they're like ready to eat. Okay, so because I could not put my camera over my stove, we're gonna get a little creative today. So you can like see what it looks like. And we're gonna use this really cool burner that I have. It's like a portable burner. Just gonna clean it because I'm gonna put the burner right here. And I'm just gonna use that flour and put it in here because I'm gonna reuse it later. Why waste it? Okay, so we're gonna use a burner, but before we use the burner, you can take these and you can grill them dry, like in the pan dry, or you can grill them with oil. So I have a bottle of grapeseed oil that we love. It's like a neutral flavored oil. It doesn't really taste like anything, but it can handle the high heat, because you want to be careful that you don't use like an olive oil and it start to burn, right? Because you're essentially cooking them on a pretty high heat. If you wanted olive oil as a flavor, you can put olive oil in your dough, and that's super good. Another thing that we do in our house is we take the grapeseed oil and we put it in a pan with garlic, and we essentially like slow cook it. So this is like flavored like garlic oil. So we can use that and it'll give us this really nice like garlicky flavor. But the grapeseed oil is good too if you want like a neutral flavor, because you may want to bake them all off and then make some for dessert. I was working the dough that I broke. Let me slide these over our little friends so they can have a good nap. So let's talk about butter. You want it unsalted, right? You want a really good like unsalted butter because you want to be able to control the salt in here. If let's say you over salted this by accident and then you added salted butter and then you wanted to add like a feta cheese or something to this, it's going to be way too salty. So you want to use unsalted butter, because then if you need to add salt or do something like that, you're in control of it. You don't know how much salt is in the butter until you taste it. And that's like a bit too late. Okay, so we buy our butter in the block. It's cheaper, right? Like that's not cut, because sometimes butter, like the good butter especially, is super expensive. So I know that it's like kind of kooky, or maybe it's just me when you buy the butter, like when I was younger, and I'd be like, what? Cool, I have a block of butter, and now they're saying like, give me a stick. How in the world do I find that out? So you have your whole block, right? You see it? You want to cut it long ways. This is the short ends. This is the long sides. So I'm gonna cut it long ways, straight down the middle, right? So knowing that this is a pound of butter, a whole block, and then I'm gonna flip it over and line it up. Same practice. I've just cut it in half, and now I'm gonna cut it in fours. And here are my 4 sticks of butter, right? And this is cheaper. So like sometimes butter that costs you like $8, it's a little sticky because I had it sitting out. That costs you like $8 or more. That's like really good. You can probably get it for half the price if you buy it in the whole block. And now you know how to like save your little money and get you some good butter. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of this. I'm gonna put it back in the refrigerator and put it in my oil container from earlier. Because I want a little bit of butter in there for flavor. I'm gonna stick this in the fridge so it gets nice and cold again. And I'm gonna get my burner. Okay. My handy dandy burner. Also gonna move our little friends over a bit more because I don't want them to heat up and be a casualty of war. Okay, so I got a pretty big pot. I tested this recipe out earlier because I wanted to make sure I didn't need to like change the salt or anything. So that's what you see in here, and it's just grapeseed oil. So if you want to buy one of these, it's really fun. And it's great to like have a cookout in the park or go camping. I'm lying. I wouldn't know. I don't go camping, but for the park or something like that. Or if you end up somewhere like me and you need to do a dinner party and they don't have a kitchen or a gas stove, this is a good alternative. So it comes with like a little can, right? And it looks like this, and it's butane, and it has like a red cap on it. And you just pull it off, and there's like a little like receiving end right here. And you stick that in there. Don't be alarmed, it does smell like gas. And then you want to close it. There's a lever that says lock fuel, and you lock it in place. It is like cautionary because it won't lock unless it's like right. Okay, so see, I threw it in here. There's like a little groove in the neck of the bottle, and you want to make sure that clamp goes in there. And then you want to lock it in place, and then you just turn it on, and boom, you got fire. And it's like no joke. It gets hot really fast. So when you're adding your oil, for something like this, we want a high heat oil, like our grapeseed, like a peanut oil, olive oil. You want to kind of stay away from it if it's pure olive oil. If you want to blend it, you could do like 40% olive oil, 60% grapeseed, something. You want to do a blend so that way you get the flavor of the grapeseed, but the durability of, the flavor of the olive oil, but the durability of the grapeseed, right? So I'm just going to put this in here. If you were like, because I already did it, but like one time around, and then one more time around is probably like a tablespoon. So you just want to coat it. So the things that you want to look for, right? As it starts to heat up, you want it to be shimmery. It's gonna look like it's thinning out first. It sounds really weird to explain, but like if you don't know what to look for, it'll begin to look like it's thinning out, like it's more watery, and then it'll become to look shimmery. Like if you look at it from afar, it looks like the ground on a hot day. And you'll see it like moving a little bit. Don't put water. If you're already skeptical about like cooking and you're nervous, don't throw water in here, because water will pop and it'll burn you and you'll feel like you're gonna die. And this is why I hate cooking, right? You wanna do like a little tester piece. Like you'll get a little piece, or you can do flour. See, that's how I know this is ready. It'll start to move around and be a little more fluid. And then you can actually turn it down. If it gets too hot and you see like smoking, you can actually turn it all the way off. And because the pan is hot and it's like a carryover cook in a sense, like mine is starting to smoke. So in all honesty, I can turn this whole thing off. And the pan is still hot and I can cook. So let's talk about this, because the one thing you hate is like an upsplash, right? Like you like feel like you drop it in and then it like burns you. So it's twofold. You want to drop away from you the last little piece so it splashes that way. But also you want to take it, this is like super high. I'm 4'11". This is gotta be 4 feet with this counter on it. You want to take, I don't know if you can see me. Let me turn it this way so you can see. So you want to take your handle, right? Like I'm standing here. Away from me is over here, right? Where the handle is. This part of the handle. So I'm going to take the actual handle and I'm going to tilt it away from me. And I'm going to, hold on, let me switch so I'm right-handed. I'm going to tilt it away from me and I'm going to drop it in there. And then I'm just going to shake it back, right? So all the splashing, all the things happen away from me. And then I can like control the oil and move it back. I'm going to turn this on and turn it up a little bit. And you can see, and you want to hear the sizzle. So let's talk about that. You want to make sure that it's hot enough and you want to hear the sizzle. Because have you ever eaten like, fried chicken is a really great example, but there are other things that do it. Like if you cook a piece of steak and you eat it and then you feel like your mouth is like really, really greasy. It's because you put it in the oil and the oil wasn't hot enough. So it starts to coat the oil instead of like doing its thing in the oil. Here's my spatula. So you'll start to see it bubble up. You can pop those bubbles if you like. I like the air pockets. I like the doughiness. I want the crispiness around the edge and I want it to be all doughy in the center. And so you'll see it start to begin to have a cook line. I turn this heat back on and this thing gets pretty hot. So it moves pretty quickly. I'm gonna turn it this way. And you want to kind of pick it up and then just flip it. I flipped it towards me, but see? And so this is where it was bubbling in the center and then the flat part around the edge. So that's why it's a little lighter and like crispier, but I've turned it down because I don't really need it to like do the same thing on this side. If you're going to keep doing this, when I lift this up, you'll see it's like flour in there and it starts to build up. If you do want to add butter, I didn't add butter, I just did grapeseed oil. I would cut it with a little grapeseed oil because the butter will start to brown and that's delicious, but burnt butter is not, right? So I'm just gonna take it and turn it one more time and it's done. See, I turned it on, the heat is off essentially, and see how it's like got brown spots everywhere. So it's like a little crispy, a little doughy, but it's still crunchy right here. And it's like super good. And so I'm just gonna set it on my plate. Now, I believe in quality control. You wanna salt it, taste it, whatever you need to do before you give it to the people. You work this hard, you eat it first, so you know how to feel about it. So I'm just gonna do this. It's okay that the flour's in there. If it makes you nervous, for sure, wipe it out, you know, and you can keep going. You don't necessarily need it unless you're gonna make a roux or, you know, use that to be the thickener if you wanna make like, add butter and make a sauce. So see, I'm just gonna drop it in here. I know that it's hot because I can see it shimmering. So I'm gonna drop it in here and lay it away from me. And I'm gonna turn the heat up just a smidge. You won't necessarily hear the less oil that you have in here. You won't hear the sizzle as much because there's nothing to make it sizzle. Normally when I do this, my fiance and I do it together. And so I will roll them out and we'll have like an assembly line. I'll roll them out, she'll fry them. And so we can keep it like moving. We'll let them rest. But I can show you the little babies that are resting over here. See how they're growing? See, they look a little like soft. See how it's like bouncing back? It looks like a, I don't know, kind of looks like a dumpling. It's delicious. I just love flour in general. I wish I could eat it and it'd be okay. You'll hear them. They sound a little squishy. Like, let me see if I don't know if you can hear this, but they sound squishy. And that's what you want. Okay, let's see. And then you'll find like a good temp. See, I turn this down and it's fine, but I'm gonna turn it up just a smidge, just to let it heat up. It was actually pretty much off. You don't have to do this. I'm living on the edge. I just want to get the oil that's in here like moving around. You could be super adventurous and like take some butter. Listen, let me tell you why you can take butter and eat this like this, because you're standing on your feet and you're moving around and you're burning calories. So girl, take the butter and put it in there and eat it for the calories that you've already burned. You know what I'm saying? Treat yourself. And then it smells so good with the butter. And so I'm just gonna move it a little bit and like pick up that butter. I'm just gonna. So see, this one is nice. And it's got a little bit of color because not everybody likes them crunchy. And quite frankly, like the darker one that is crunchy, those are the ones I would eat now. These are the ones that you can throw on your bag. And don't be nervous. Like what I'll do is like, if I know that we're not gonna eat them right away, I'll put them in a Ziploc baggie while they're warm and like close it and press out the air just a little bit to try to trap that moisture and the heat in the bag to keep them moist so they don't get hard. It smells really good. I'm really excited to eat this. We haven't made them. So see, it's got a little more color. I would like pick it up and hold it, but I want my fingers, you know? So this one's actually good to go. Ooh, we're almost at our time, friends. Do you guys have any questions? I'm gonna add a little oil.
How well do these keep in the fridge after cooking?
I don't put mine in the fridge, believe it or not. I put them in the cabinet and it gives me, I mean, we've had ours in the cabinet for, I mean, our cabinet is cool, dark, dry. 3 weeks. But I mean, you're not gonna make 3. It's also because we made like a lot. Like I made like 50 of these one day. I don't recommend that, but they keep for in your refrigerator. You keep for about 3.5, 4 weeks. Or if you have a big batch, and let's say you only want to make like 4, you can freeze the rest and then use them later. So my heat is still on, so I'm watching my heat. If you can see it, you see that part is bubbling up. So I know that I'm like gonna turn it because that's a hot spot for me. And I don't want it to like burn, see? So these are pretty thick. So they're gonna be super bready, super doughy. If I was to roll them out thinner, I mean, the thinner you get, the more it's like a cracker. But so this will still have like a good, even though it has color, it'll still have a crisp to it, but it'll still be doughy in the center, which is nice. Okay, guys, I think we've made enough. I feel like we did a good thing. Okay, so I'm gonna slide this over, and this is what they look like. I'm obviously not gonna grab that one because it's hot. I'm gonna flip them over and grab this one. Let me try to wipe my hands off the flour. And this is what it looks like. And see, it's still like pliable. You can still like bend it, but it's got a little snap. You see where the darker parts on the edges are. It's a little crispy, but it's still very like doughy and it's great. And it absorbs really, really well. So like if you wanted to do it and have like some kind of a dipping sauce, or you had like how you could just do straight olive oil. You could take some of the yogurt, leftover yogurt that you had from the recipe, and do like yogurt, a little mint, or like a flavoring that you like, whether it's like dried spices, like sometimes we'll do like lemon zest, like ground lemongrass or something like that. What I see a question. What does it say, Sally? What did you say, Sally? So the yogurt just adds moisture, right? The yogurt, because we're not using milk. So and it's a fat. So it acts as like an extra layer of fat in doing this recipe. We only used water, butter, yogurt. So the hot water helps trap the moisture. And then the butter and the oil and the yogurt act as flavor and fat. I used not like plain yogurt. I didn't use like a vanilla or a flavor or anything like that. You want one? There you go. My kids can eat them. Okay, go that way. Thank you for your time. So yeah, then I guess I'm gonna make more. So yeah, that's what the yogurt acts like in the wet mix. It's like think of it like buttermilk or like a heavy cream. It's like a really good thick fat that'll help bring it all together. And it's really easy. It's like an all-in. If you have the, what do you call it, instant yeast, you literally can I can put more than one in here. Just go for it. This one has a hole in it, but I'm excited to see what that tastes like. Whereas like, if you do the package, you have to bloom it in water separately for a few minutes, but you don't have to do that. You can literally dump everything in, get it going in your mixer. I did it by hand. So that way the noise wasn't horrible and you guys can see it. And they're super simple. And you can freeze the dough and everything. Yeah, and if you get one of these, they do get hot, but the canister goes like really fast. Like you got like a few uses out of it and then it's like done. Where's my tongue? Do you guys have any other questions? I know our time is almost near, friends. I'm grabbing another plate. So this is like super fun, right? Like, because the other thing is now you got this jazzy recipe. Ooh, that looks super good. If you feel like it's not enough salt, like we like salt in our house, you can add a little bit of salt into this, like just finish it with salt when it comes out. But you can do this. This is like a really great We'll talk about like chicken and stuff next week and like meats. But this is like really fun because you could do the salad from last week. And that salad, by the way, for those of you who did do it or try it, we kept it for like a few days in the container and all mixed together because remember the end, I mixed it all up in the bowl and we put that bowl in a container and put it in the refrigerator. And so the mango started to break down from the olive oil, like added a good fat, and then the vinegar and the lemon juice and the lime started to help it break down, and it helped the cabbage break down. So it was still crispy, but like still bright and delicious. And then like the bell pepper flavor, the red bell pepper started to mix into the dressing and everything. So it was super good. So you could do like this with a salad. You could roll them out thinner and do them like a little cracker style, or you could like totally take this and cut it in like little squares and like bake it until you can like dry it out. But that's more work. Once I turn the oven on, it gets hot. So yeah, you can roll it out super thin, like a cute little cracker, or keep it doughy like this and add your like fresh mango salad to it and make it a whole day. If you're like me, you'll have like a little cocktail and drink responsibly and eat the whole thing in the bed while you're watching TV. You know what I'm saying? Do you guys have any more questions? Yes. No. So I will, you have this recipe. We'll post the next recipe for the next class by Friday. I will redo and post the recipe for the preserved lemons. You could totally do that. You could cut these up and add them to your little mango salad. I'm really proud of my preserved lemons. I'm not necessarily a plant person. I'm a project person, and this is like my babies. I'm super proud of these preserved lemons. And for those of you who came in late when we were talking about the lemons from last week, I put them in this container, and it was about like a pound and a half of lemons. I just cut them in half, and it was like 4 tablespoons of salt. And I would put them in, salt a little bit, smash them down with more lemon, salt, smash, add like, so it would be lemon, salt, lemon, salt, and the juice would start to come out. And then at the very end, I would salt it and add olive oil to the top. That's why you can see it looks a little like oily here. And so I did those. And then I also did them with oranges. The recipe says, which I didn't do with these, is to like take them out and like juice them, which I totally should have done because you see how like the juice is halfway, and juice them. So you want to do that. So you take it, you salt it, layer it, and like smash it down. And then you go back a week later and you want to pull them all out and juice them all fully and then add them all back. I added a little extra salt because I felt like I didn't have enough salt at the time. And you want to push them all back in and then pour the juice that you squoze on top of all of it, and then finish it again with like a little bit of olive oil. And then you want to let that sit for 4 weeks. So it's really a 5-week process, the one I did. I think you can like just juice them straight through from the beginning, and then you can let them sit for the 4 weeks or the 30 days. And that's it. Do you guys have any questions? I'm gonna eat bread while we wait. So yeah, okay. See, it's like it's still pretty thick. But then you have areas that are like, remember where it was bubbling up? And it got a little flat, but this part is crispy, but it's still soft because the air pocket was right there. But then you have like this little guy over here where it's like still doughy. So you could take them, some of them if you wanted to. I don't. It's too much work, honestly, and like stuff them and everything. But yeah, and it's super good and it's delicious. Like with a little, eat them hot with like a cool, cold dipping sauce. Like let's say you had leftover dressing or like liquid when you drained off your mango salad because it's a little sweet, it's a little spicy and things like that. You could take it and like dip it in that, and then it gives you like that sweet feel that you need. Like if you don't want like sugar, but you want like something to give you that like sweet kick, you could totally do that, and it'll be like just enough, and you can close your mind and think it's cake or something. So thanks guys for coming. I'll see you next week. We'll do something super fun. Maybe next week we'll revisit our flatbread and make ice cream. Because my family, we have a kid who's allergic to eggs. So we have to get super creative. She's allergic to a lot of things, but eggs specifically, and you use them to make ice cream. So we have like a really fun way of making ice cream. So we'll probably do that next week too. So yeah, thank you so much for coming. Yes. Oh, yes, Amber, it does. Thank you. And I'll see you guys next week. Feel free to email any one of us. You can find me on Instagram at @SiciliSierra if you have questions, and I will happily answer your questions from this week or last week. Okay, bye guys.